So what's the secret to why perfectionists are perfectionists? Wait, before you answer, let me guess. Is it trauma?
Okay. Another secret way perfectionists self-sabotage is by blaming others for their imperfections or their struggles or their inability to be perfect or whatever, or for their perfectionism in the first place. But other people do play a part in our perfectionism. And like you said, they may traumatize us into becoming perfectionists. So let me ask you some questions. When you were younger, did you ever worry about not being good enough?
Yes.
And if you adopted perfectionism, would that solve that? If you were perfect, you wouldn't have to worry about not being good enough anymore, yeah?
Yes.
So when you were younger, you worried about not being good enough, and what seemed like a great solution?
Perfectionism.
Yeah. Did you ever worry about being abandoned, left alone, unsupported?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you were perfect, though, would that solve this? I'm like thrilled with my genius questions, and you're like crying. So I love you.
I love you. Yeah. To answer your question, yes.
Because no one abandons something that's perfect, right?
Right.
Did you ever worry about needing to be positive all the time? I need to be positive all the time.
Yes.
But would perfectionism solve that? If you were perfect?
Thought so.
Yeah, this is what happens. People see it as a good solution. They pick it up as a coping mechanism. You okay? You sure?
Yeah.
It's just questions about your old you.
Okay. Please continue.
All right. Did you ever worry about getting enough validation?
Yeah.
And attention?
Yes.
But if you were perfect, would that be an issue?
No.
Right. You get tons of validation for being perfect.
Right.
You get tons of validation and attention for being perfect.
Yeah.
So can you see a giant list of reasons why you might pick up perfectionism?
Yes, I can.
Right. And so usually where do these worries about being good enough and abandonment and validation and being positive stem from, right? Where do they seem to come from?
Trauma.
Yeah. And from other people.
And other people.
So it's tempting to blame other people for our perfectionism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a common way perfectionists self-sabotage because it's already not serving you to be a perfectionist.
Right.
And then what happens when you throw blaming others on top of that?
It just makes it worse.
Right. It just makes it worse.
Yeah.
So now you're not serving yourself by being a perfectionist, and you're not serving yourself by throwing blame around everywhere left and right.
Yeah.
This is not the path to victory here.
No.
This is not the path to a wonderful, fulfilling, happy life. This is not the path to transforming or pulling a 180 and getting your life on track. This is not the path to all your dreams and the things you want. The path is the opposite of this stuff. It's ditching perfectionism and going towards progress, messy progress. It's ditching blame for others, and it's going towards personal responsibility and taking control and taking whatever hand life deals you and making the best of it. This is where you tear it up. This is where all the people you look up to went. This is the path they took.
Right.
None of them took the perfectionist blame others path. So yes, perfectionism is often a trauma response or a coping mechanism that we pick up to deal with trauma we experienced from others when we were younger. But no, blaming others for our current state rarely, if ever, helps.
So whatever, I think you're going to zig, you zag. So I kind of made light of my question because I thought it was obvious that it was trauma, but I was only kind of joking, like, because people blame trauma for everything. Like, oh, I'm traumatized by this, I'm triggered and traumatized and all that. So I thought this probably isn't because of trauma. And then you made me cry and realize that's exactly where this comes from. Of course, it comes from other people, and it comes from reactions to experiences in my life when I was younger, and it formed who I was. And reaching for perfection helped with the feelings of abandonment and not being good enough and all the other trauma things you made me cry about that you mentioned already. Like, so this makes perfect sense. And I hadn't actually never considered it. And yes, I blamed other people for reasons why, but not to this extent, not to the questions you asked me. So this makes a lot of sense, and it's it's a bit painful to admit, honestly, that those experiences were far more damaging than I realized, because it knocked my self-esteem and made me feel really bad, but it also brought out a response in myself.
Yeah, perfectionism.
To reach for basically death.
Reach for perfect.
Yeah, perfect. But perfect, as we already defined,
is the void.
Is the end. And so this whole time I've been reaching for that, for the end.
Yeah, but I've never recommended it. And I've set an example of a healthy idealist.
Of course you do. But because
all I do.
And some of those traumas that you mentioned, I haven't dealt with at all, because that's why they made me emotional and I started to cry. So there were some issues there.
Well,
for me.
That might be why your perfectionism lingers, even though I continually insist you ditch it.
Yes, I definitely, this is something that I'm still working on. This is something I work on every day, even today before we film. So yeah, but I feel so much better about it already through this episode. Like, first of all, I couldn't even define what it was when we started. And now I have something new to reach for, which is idealism. So I'm healing on camera in front of everybody. And so if I can do it, and I've had deep-seated sexual trauma and abuse in my past, addiction issues, and just overall not treated very nice by a lot of people. And if I can heal this quickly and move on, I mean, it's not like I have to practice, of course, but even just making the decision to change here, this is progress. And it's helping me heal those things, because I already feel better. So thank you.